Prophet was in. If we count the other battles where he dispatched the mu'mineen to take care of their enemies, easily you can say that it's over 60. Right? Around 60 battles, let alone the other fitnas that are happening, the Yahud inside Medina, what's happening outside Medina, trips, people, Romans, whatever. Okay? So this is a time of hard work, and Amirul Mu'mineen putting the work in and making sure that Islam is successful. So day and night, there's a struggle, and Amirul Mu'mineen is that soldier of Islam. Other people are saving themselves for the good times. Amirul Mu'mineen gets his hands dirty. What happens is that for some people, they play politics. If you get your hands dirty, like for instance with the Holy Prophet and the battles that he has to fight, he's going to have to go over and fight members of another community. People are going to have to lose their lives. The Prophet is rahmatan lil alameen, but in order to be rahmatan lil alameen, he's got to take out the enemies of Islam. Okay. If someone, and notable companions failed this test, there are notable companions who don't even have one mayyit to their name. And of course, later on, once Islam takes power, then for people, they're like, okay, well, you don't have a bad name. You haven't killed people. You don't have blood on your hands. But Amirul Mu'mineen would make it happen for the Prophet, which would mean that he would have to go out there and he'd have to kill the enemies of Islam. And that creates a lot of hatred, a lot of resentment. And Imam Ali would do that without fail. So, what Imam Ali would do, and this created a lot of hatred, but what happened was that Imam Ali was the kind of person, he would never let the reproach of any blamer stop him from doing something in the way of Allah. When Allah wants to talk about or praise a group of the mu'mineen, he says that there's some among the believers who have this trait. لا تأخذهم في الله لومة لائم. There are some people who are so in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The words of the people, what they say, how they react, what they're going to do, none of this will stop that person in the way of Allah. So Amirul Mu'mineen was like that. Let's go to the Battle of Badr. In the Battle of Badr, let's go back to what it was actually like on the ground, the believers at that time. You're talking about a ragtag army. A ragtag army. The enemies had figured out that Islam was a threat. They felt Islam was a threat. They wanted to go over, based on my studies, they were going to make a caravan, raise money, use that money to go and wipe the Muslims out. Muslims find out, and they go and intercept this military caravan, which is there to raise money. The caravan escapes the first time. Abu Sufyan sends word back to the Muslims, to the Meccans, come over and save the caravan. So now what happens is they weren't prepared for a war at that time. They were thinking the caravan will come out, and we'll come out for the war, armed to the teeth, plenty of money, fund their war. Because they're not fighting qurbatan ilallah. They don't have the idea of shahada and martyrdom. No, for them a war is plunder. So they go over and do this. Because of the Prophet's preemptive strike, which was right for him to do, now the brains and the generals of the mushrikeen are forced to come out to the battle. Let's say you have a city like Qom. Okay? They start landing paratroopers on the city. Everybody got to go out and fight, including, let's say, your Maraj. Everyone's defense is wajib on everybody. So normally, if you had a chance, you would send troops out. You take care of people who have been battle trained, they've been ready, whatever. But this time, the Meccans, the mushrikeen, have sent out their brains. Abu Jahl, these guys. They go out armed to the teeth. Almost 1,000 of them to go out and face the Muslims who went out to first intercept the caravan. Around 313 of them. They said the Muslims had around 3 to 4 men per camel. It's not like the Muslims were like well armed, armed to the teeth. Some of the Muslims didn't even have swords. They had sticks. And you're going to fight this army which was armed to the teeth with champions and warriors and the minds of the Mushrikeen's army. So these people went out to fight, and in the Battle of Badr alone, Amirul Mu'mineen killed 35 of the enemy. Destroyed them, wrecked their plans. But because the Muslims wouldn't listen to the Prophet and started collecting the war booty and started capturing prisoners, otherwise, if they had just listened to the Prophet, the fitna could have been ended right then. They could have routed the Mushrikeen altogether. But the Muslims didn't do that. We'll go to the Battle of Uhud. On the Battle of Uhud, like I was telling you, Amir al-Mu'mineen went out to fight Talha bin Abi Talha. He killed him. His brothers came up and took the standard, one after the other. All of the brothers come over and take up the standard. After that, let's say it's around 10 individuals that take up the standard. Their slave comes over and takes up the standard. He's picking up the flag. This guy is foaming at the mouth, red eyes, monster, a beast. Amir al-Mu'mineen cuts this guy down. And he would have been able to rout the battle, but the Muslims didn't listen to the Prophet. They come running off the hill. They start grabbing up the loot, and then after that, then the battle goes to the next battle. Okay? But in that battle, he saved the Prophet of Allah, came back, and in that battle, he picked up, according to some accounts, 90 wounds. So all of the difficult things in Islam, all of the hardship, and of course, he's creating a lot of hatred for Amir al-Mu'mineen by doing this. This is what it says in Dua Nutbah. قَدْ وَتَرَ فِيهِ سَنَادِيدَ الْعَرَبِ. For the sake of Allah, he killed the champions of the Arabs. وَقَتَلَ أَبْطَالَهُم. He killed their heroes. وَنَاحَشَ ضُعْبَانَهُم. He bit or slashed their wolves and their ferocious fighters. So because of this, فَأَوْدَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ أَحْقَادًا. Hatred was put into the hearts of these people, بَدَرِيًّا وَخَيْبَرِيًّا وَحُنَيْنِيًّا وَغَيْرَهُنَّ. Okay? So Amir al-Mu'mineen is doing all of this. Now it comes to the Battle of Khandaq. In the Battle of Khandaq, again, the Prophet does the trench, and because he's dug the trench, the enemies of Islam aren't able to come in and wipe out the Islamic nation. But some of the Muslims haven't dug the trench properly, so there's one area of the trench that's a little bit shallower. The enemy can come to the side, and one of the champions of the enemy comes over with several other champions, perhaps 5 of them the number, and they rush towards the area that's not very far, and they make their horses jump to the other side of the trench. Now you got to remember who this guy is, who Amr is. Amr is someone who's reckoned equal to 100 of the enemy. Someone who in the battles has picked up a baby camel and used it for a shield. He comes over to the other side of the thing. Now him and the champions, and what he's going to do is not to fight one-on-one, but rather to call for the believers to fight him one-on-one. Somebody who's fought, and he's reckoned equal to 100 people. So as soon as he comes in, this is what we find in the books of Tafsir and Bihar al-Anwar. قام علي. Ali stood up. فقال أنا أبارزه يا رسول الله. As soon as he come in, this champion prancing on his horse, arrogantly challenging the Muslims, Amir al-Mu'mineen offers to fight him. The Prophet tells Amir al-Mu'mineen to sit down. The others, Amr is calling for them to come and fight him. The others don't say anything. This is what it says in the books. An-nasu sukut. People were absolutely silent. Ala ru'usihim at-tayr. They were sitting as if there was a bird sitting on their heads. If anybody moves, that bird will move. Nobody wants to look at one another. Nobody wants to breathe. Everybody's just down. I don't even want to think about going out and facing sudden death with this enemy. Amr saw the weakness of the Muslims and he starts to speak out. He said, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, innakum taz'umun anna qatlakum fil jannah wa qatlana fil nar. You people believe that our kill go to hellfire and your kill go to paradise. So don't you, فَمَا يُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن يُقْدِمَ عَلَى الْجَنَّةِ أَوْ يُقْدِمْ عَدُوَّهُ عَلَى النَّارِ. If you really believe that, so he's now mocking the beliefs of the Muslims. If you really believe that, then are you willing, which one of you, don't you wish to go to paradise? Or you send one of your enemy to the hellfire? And again, the people didn't say anything. Amir al-Mu'mineen stood up. The Prophet again told him. He told Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ana lahura, ya Rasulullah. Like, I got this. Let me get up. He said no. So Amr's riding back and forth in front of the Mu'mineen, prancing on his horse, challenging the believers, talking about how hoarse, my voice is hoarse from challenging you guys, and nobody wants to say anything. And part of the line of poetry is Hal min Mubarak. Part of his line of poetry is that. So when he says that, then Amir al-Mu'mineen stood up and he said, Ya Rasulullah, just give me permission to go out and fight. And it's mentioned in the books that first the Prophet told him, he said that, Innahu Amr bin Abdi Wud. You know what this is? This is Amr bin Abdi Wood, and he says that, well, Ana Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ready? So he goes on. He gives him his sword, he puts his turban on him, and when he saw Amir al-Mu'mineen going forward, then he said, Baraz al-Iman kulluhu ila al-kufr kulluhu. That all of Iman, all of the values of Islam, everything that we believe and we represent is now going out to face all of kufr. And Amir al-Mu'mineen went out and he came to face this champion. Now Amir al-Mu'mineen had heard the legend of Amr. The legend of Amr was this, that if anyone was to offer him 3 choices, he would accept. So Amir al-Mu'mineen asked him, he said that, look, why don't you accept Islam? I didn't come all the way over here to accept Islam. He said, why don't you go back? Let the Arabs deal with the Prophet. No, he said, they'll say that I'm a coward and I run away. He said, well, your opponent is on foot. Why don't you fight your opponent on foot? He said, I never thought anybody would ask. Jumps off the horse, hamstrings the horse, chops off the legs of the horse, and he's now ready to fight Amir al-Mu'mineen. They start to go at it. He actually wounds Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen cuts him down, and then they say that he was so disgusting, he spit in the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now Amir al-Mu'mineen could have killed him, but he realizes now this is personal anger. He takes a step back, he walks around, takes his time, and he comes back and he sits on Amr's chest, and he's about to decapitate Amr. And Amr told him, he said, look, please, I ask you not to remove my clothing. Normally they plunder the enemy fighters. Don't worry about that. Normally went over, and he's praising God in this state. You kabbir or you majid. Right? Doing tamjid of Allah and takbir of Allahu Akbar, right? Remembering God, and he decapitates Amr. When he comes back, they say that there was a little bounce in Amir al-Mu'mineen's step. He's coming back, the way he's walking, normally Amir al-Mu'mineen is walking really humbly and everything like that. But when he comes back, it's mentioned in the book, وَهُوَ يَقْتُرُ فِي مَشْيِهِ. So a little bounce in his step. He's carrying the head of Amr. Oh, before we get to that, one other thing. The other champions were so horrified. You got to remember that everybody had come close to the Khandak to see what was happening. So Abu Sufyan and all these guys, everybody's approaching to see what's going to happen in this fight. When Amir al-Mu'mineen kills him, the other guys break, the other champions break. They start running, and Amir al-Mu'mineen is on foot, and he's chasing them. So they're running on their horses. They're so terrified of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they're running. So these other guys go, and they're running back to the Khandak. So they go. They're jumping their horses. Let's say it's 5 guys. 1, jump. He gets away. 2, jump. Amir al-Mu'mineen is running behind these guys. 1 guy jumps, and he falls off his horse. Falls into the Khandak. So the Muslims are standing there. So what do? You stone them. So they start throwing rocks at the guy. He's like, no, this is not the way to go. Amir al-Mu'mineen jumps down into the trench, dispatches him to the hellfire. Then he comes back out, having decapitated Amr, and he's walking over with bounce in his step to the Prophet. He's carrying the head of Amr. So one of the companions, and I'm not going to mention, it's mentioned who he is. I'm not going to mention the name of the companion. He starts to complain about what Amr did. This is what it says. Allah cursed the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt. Anyhow, he says, Ya Rasulullah, he says, Allah tara, Ya Rasulullah, ila Ali. You're not looking at Ali. Kayfa yamshi. How he's walking. You see how he's walking? He should be walking humbly. Why is he like this? So then the Prophet of Allah said, Innaha lamashiyatun la yamqatuha Allah fi hadha al-maqam. What Imam Ali is doing is the exact right thing to do for right here. He should be walking with that bounce in his step. Right now, just killed the enemies of Islam. That's exactly what he should be doing. Little Mu'mineen comes back with the head of Amr. The last one that I want to talk about tonight is when Amir al-Mu'mineen had to do what nobody else had been able to accomplish. He goes over. This is one of the feats of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Mu'mineen, they had a small group of fighters, around 1,500 people, as written in the books of history, and they're going to fight now the Yahud, who've been making trouble for the Muslims, who've been causing problems for the Muslims, and they're in a place called Khaybar, this lush farming land, and they've got fortresses over there. If you guys get a chance, inshallah, Allah give tawfiq, and we're able to actually visit some of these holy sites, and just see what it was like to fight. I mean, what for Amir al-Mu'mineen to fight and believers to fight in those things. I got a chance to see an actual video of what Khandak looks like. Not Khandak, but the forts of Khaybar. Okay, so you're fighting a fortified. But even now, if you wanted to storm Khaybar with modern troops, it would be difficult. Okay, fortified position. They're up from above. They're raining things down on you. That's inside the fortress itself. Narrow little alleyways and stuff like that. Anyhow, the Muslims, there was a fortress, a series of fortresses, and the Muslims started to go over and they conquered the fortresses one by one. But there's one fortress, which is known as Al-Qamus, and this fortress hasn't been conquered. The prophets have been sending the Muslims, they've been waging sieges over there, trying to take the fortress, and I'm not going to mention the names of the companions who tried to do it. Notable companions had tried to take the standard of Islam, go over there, conquer the fort, and they got beat back. The next one, he gets a chance. He goes over to the fortress. He gets beat back. Then the Prophet of Allah makes a statement. He says that tomorrow, he says, لَأُؤْتِيَنَّ الرَّأْيَ غَدًا رَجُلًا يُحِبُّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Tomorrow I'm going to give this standard to a man who loves Allah and His Messenger. Karrar ghayru farrar. Somebody who's not going to be like you guys and is going to run back from the fortress. This guy is going to go. He's not going to stop until he's conquered that fort. There's no way Amir al-Mu'mineen is coming back from this thing except that that fortress is going to be open. He's not going to return until Allah has conquered that fort on his hands. So Amir al-Mu'mineen came up to fight the enemy. And when he came up to fight the enemy, they threw open the gates of Khaybar, and this champion came out, a man named Harith, who was so terrifying. The other people, he's yelling, shout, a champion. Their champion came out. Other Muslims retreating. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes over. He kills him, and when he kills him, then the real guy gets upset. The real guy is Marhab. Okay? Harith was a champion. Harith was terrifying. For you and I, we might not have been able to face Harith. He's a champion. But the real guy, whose brother you just killed, is a man named Marhab. So what Marhab did was he was going to take vengeance. So he came out armed to the teeth. Armed to the teeth. He had on a Yemeni coat of mail, and he was wearing a particular stone on his head, or helmet. A stone on the helmet. This special armor, and he's coming out and reciting verses. That the walls of Khaybar know that I'm Marhab, and this and that. He's a warrior coming out to fight Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Amir al-Mu'mineen goes out there, and they start to fight back and forth. When Amir al-Mu'mineen starts to fight him, the battle continues till he gets a chance to take his shot. When he takes his shot, I'm going to use an example on this brother here. Okay? Let's pretend this brother has a helmet on and a stone on it and the armor, right? He hits him with his sword. He goes through the helmet, right, through the stone, through the helmet, through his head up to his teeth. Okay? It's not an easy blow. Okay? To his teeth. This guy drops. Everybody else starts to run. When they start to run, Amir al-Mu'mineen's chasing after these guys. One of them goes over to take the shield from Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he comes running after these guys, comes up to the fortress, and tears the door of the fortress off. Now, just to give you an idea, he's using it as a shield whilst he goes in there and he takes care of business. To give you an idea, because he throws it down later, other people use it like it's a bridge or whatever. He said 10 men couldn't flip it, let alone to pick it up. So we ask Allah, Muhammad wa Muhammad. That Allah makes us the soldiers of the Imam of our time. That we're the people who are willing to do the dirty work that needs to be done, whatever our Imam needs to be done, before his arrival, and let alone after his arrival. Imam Hassan was complaining. One of the people said, why is it that you turned over the affair, the government, to Muawiyah? And I'm just hoping our Imam doesn't say the same thing about us. He says that I would have fought Muawiyah day and night. Right? I wanted to go to war with this guy. I wanted to fight him day and night. He said, but I didn't have companions. I hope that our Imam, when he's looking at our gathering tonight, he sees that we've made up our minds to be those companions those people who in practice are begging the Imam to return and then to serve him. Let's make the dua for the Imam of our time and talk tonight. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma
كل وليك وجد ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه